Hello, here we are again with Swami Rama and a call to humanity. A call to humanity, a call to humanity. Subtitled Revolutionary Thoughts on the Direction for Spiritual and Social Reform in Our Time. And we're in a section on religion and Dharma. Religion and Dharma. Spiritual life can be divided into two main paths. One advocates involvement in worldly pursuits, and the other advocates renunciation. The first advocates selfless action and karma yoga, and the second proposes renunciation, which is actually self-conquest through self-sacrifice. In fact, both of these paths are inseparable. That's an important point there to keep in mind. Both of these paths are inseparable, actually. Without their complementarity, human fulfillment cannot be attained. By separating these two paths and adhering to one exclusively, we fight against ourselves and shatter the harmony of self, community, and society. A human being has a number of duties and obligations that cannot be fulfilled without worldly means and resources. There's Rojo. Hi, Rojo.
Hi, Baba.
I have two Rojos. However, a person engaged in worldly pursuits cannot have peace of mind because these worldly pleasures are not complete in themselves. Nevertheless, he cannot disregard them, for they are powerful enough to captivate the senses and the mind. The path of renunciation, on the other hand, is not easy. It requires mastery over the senses and mind, a complete dispassion for worldly objects, and a burning desire for enlightenment. These characteristics cannot be acquired just by turning away from the world. They have to be cultivated through sincere practice, knowledge, and gradual transformation. In society, conflict arises when the paths of karma yoga and renunciation are treated as separate. Conflicts arise when they're seen as separate. We forget that we have obligations toward others, and without completing these, our renunciation is not valid. Hi, Atma. If everyone were to believe that this universe is unreal without a proper attitude, then the society would collapse. Sometimes, out of spiritual immaturity, we ignore the basic values of human existence by focusing on this principle, overly focusing on the principle of renunciation. We must strive to find the truth by conducting ourselves skillfully, lovingly, and selflessly. A dharma that fails to bring peace and harmony in personal and community life is no dharma. Strong comment. The perfection of dharma does not lie in personal achievement alone. In order to achieve true happiness here and now, the physical aspect of life cannot be ignored. There is no need to consider the body to be unreal, yet we can remember that it is an evolute out of this material world. And so in that sense, it's the reminder that I dwell in a human body, but ultimately human body is not who I am. With the help of a healthy body and worldly resources, one can walk on the true path and practice meditation. Then ultimately, with the help of the finest instrument, the mind, here referring to mind as buddhi, as intellect, one attains liberation. In the proper context, the world and its objects are just as important as other subtle forces of nature. Nature bestows her wealth. Hi, Tara. The body and mind are instruments for both worldly enjoyment and spiritual enlightenment. We can have worldly enjoyment. I just had a delightful meal together with my friend Rojo. This is pretty nice. This is life in the world. And I get to hang out with the rest of you. It's pretty cool. Nature bestows her wealth. The body and mind are instruments for both worldly enjoyment and spiritual enlightenment. And that dinner was after a few minutes of quiet meditation. Of course, in the context of the highest truth, Brahman, the body seems to be inferior and mortal. That word inferior, he says, seems to be inferior. Well, it's not inferior, although if we get too locked up intellectually in the philosophy, we can get the impression that body is bad and body is inferior and merely mortal and therefore is a bad thing. That's a misunderstanding. From another perspective, however, both body and soul are equally important and meaningful, and both are Brahman, I add. The body is the means and the Atman is the goal. Without the means, the goal cannot be achieved. Similarly, material objects, well, I lost my place, but similarly, material objects are the means for the growth of society. Without adequate means and resources, community life cannot be happy and healthy. Since community life and personal life are interrelated, it is necessary to maintain a balance between material and spiritual achievements. Today, our need is a religion that imparts equal importance to science and spirituality, material wealth and mental discipline. We need a religion that can guide humanity to achieve peace and happiness now and in the future. And note here, I think you can hear this in there. He's not saying let us all found a new religion that replaces all of the existing ones, but rather let's see the unity that is already there in existence behind the diversity. That's where we're headed. Such a religion would qualify to be the religion of all of us. That religion, here's a good idea, that religion will help Hindus, Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. It's not replacing anything. That's not what we're talking about. The word Dharma has multiple meanings. According to some scholars, the performance of actions is Dharma. According to others, actions upheld by righteousness alone are Dharma. According to the Bhagavad Gita, karma or action has Brahman as its origin. This indicates that by performing actions rightly, one can attain Brahman. Any action can become a part of Dharma as long as it is truth-oriented. So it's the orientation of our actions that is important. Having love for all human beings is Dharma. Helping others ahead of one's personal gain is the Dharma of those who follow the path of selfless service. Defending one's nation and society is the Dharma of soldiers and warriors. In other words, any action, big or small, that is free from selfishness is a part of Dharma. When he starts here by saying having love for all human beings is Dharma, personally, I have noted over years and decades of hanging out with this contemplation and meditation, I find an interesting phenomenon has occurred. I find it increasingly very, very easy to love everybody. I find it easy to meet a person I've never met and feel that sense of love because of the awareness of the Atman and the Brahman that is in the center of that person. But by the same token, that does not mean that I hang out day to day with every person. I have discovered for myself, this is just my way of saying it, that I find that liking a person is more individual. I may love many, many people. I may be able to feel love because of seeing the Atman, the Brahman, the Shakti, the Shiva that is at the center of that person. But it doesn't mean that I necessarily like their traits. I may not like their politics or their worldviews about, money and people and all. I may not, but underneath that, I may love clearly, but I still have room to put special value on the people I like hanging out with. Most of you who show up here together with me doing this, I know. A few show up that I don't know. Hi, Robert. Hi, Tom. Long time no see. But some of the people, over half, I would say, of the people who show up in our group satsangs like this, I know personally, and I have come to like. And others, I'm just saying, I find it easy to see the Atman in everybody. However, the highest Dharma is one who performs his duty for the welfare of humanity, loving and selflessly, and most of all, dedicates the actions and its fruit to the divine. So we try to do what we're doing, whatever you and I are individually contributing to society and to people and to humans and to the world. We're trying to do that for the welfare of humanity. I don't know how to talk to the whole of humanity, but when I come together with you and do these little online things like this, for me, I'm doing this in a way that it's open for anybody who wants to join in and listen to these principles and take it in and find it useful. I know that it's a limited number of people that are going to hear this that we're doing right now, and that's okay. But still, the spirit of it is there, and each of us in our own way serves somebody or some group of people in our community. It may be only a handful of people that you are serving personally, but still, you're doing it with an openness and a heart that is that of serving humanity. And the actions can then be dedicated to the spirit of the divine. One who has attained this highest form of Dharma performs his duties in the world and yet remains above it. This is the lotus flower symbol, the symbol of yoga, which the lotus flower grows out of the mud of the world and opens its beautiful petals. And so it's growing in the mud of the world, yet there are the beautiful petals. All his thoughts and actions become a part of Dharma. His whole life is a field of Dharma, and each one of us can work towards doing that. We get better and better at it day after day after day. He works hard without being attached to the fruits of his actions by offering everything to God, however we may personally conceive of that word God. The awakening of Dharma can be initiated by proper education. Today's education based on mere information is incomplete. In the modern educational systems, we are taught about as many mundane things as possible, but this education does not offer any method for self-evaluation and inner exploration. Present education does not teach us how to make the best use of our heritage. Independent critical thinking is not encouraged. That has resulted in leading people to confused and at times contradictory conceptions and to then imitate one another blindly. As a result, some people erroneously believe that practicing a religion means either renouncing the world or chanting religious hymns and songs or observing penances alone. The Upanishads, however, do not advocate any of these ideas. In the Upanishads, we find universal Dharma that includes both action and morality. These are the two great pillars on which the mansion of human virtues is erected. The goal of life can be attained by following a balanced path of discipline and righteousness. Such a Dharma helps one live in peace and harmony. It inspires one to uphold justice and truth. It helps an aspirant attain the right goals through right means. The aspirant can help himself without harming others. Such a person can attain his personal goals and at the same time can inspire others. His every action is directed towards defending Dharma, supporting virtues and inspiring others. And defending Dharma means in alignment with that flow of consciousness. It does not mean I am of this religion and my religion is better than your religion, so I'm going to go to war with you to defend my religion. That's not what's being talked about. The greatest scriptures, like the Vedas and Upanishads, set forth such an eternal Dharma. The intellect is superior to physical strength, but one must not forget that a sound mind dwells in a sound body. Body and mind interact and influence each other and become great instruments only if they work in harmony. As means, they are of utmost importance in attaining the goal of life. Without proper means, Dharma cannot be defended. Again, note the word defended cautiously. It's not like defending a particular religion. Shakti, strength, is the key factor in undertaking any project. Without this strength, human beings can neither uphold Dharma nor can Dharma uphold human beings. Shakti implies mental and physical strength as well as worldly resources. The Upanishads repeatedly state, live long and help others to live long. It's a nice goal, isn't it? The tradition of the Vedas was handed down by illumined seers and sages who realized the big T truth within. They did not simply think about religious values, they experienced them directly. Their direct experience is the foundation of their teaching. This is a vast difference between a scholar and a sage. A scholar tries to understand the truth through the intellect, while a sage experiences it through a pure heart. A sage's direct experience is not based on sense perception or mental faculties. The information received through the intellect is like the waves rising on the surface of the ocean. On the other hand, true experience is received from the depth of the ocean of bliss, the Atman. I'm going to read that again. That's pretty nice. The information received through the intellect is like the waves rising on the surface of the ocean. On the other hand, true experience is received from the depth of the ocean of bliss, the Atman. Truth lies not on the surface, but in the depth of consciousness. Truth cannot be the object of mere perception. It is a matter of inner experience and a source of bliss. The illumined heart can easily experience what the intellect fails to grasp. Hi, Johnny. Once there is direct realization, the door of knowledge opens forever and forms the basis of Dharma. Philosophical debates, exhibitions of pedantry, and organizational drives cannot nourish the inner virtues of the perennial Dharma. Organizational drives. This is very common. Let us form a really big, powerful institution to compete with all those other institutions. That's not it. Today, the human mind is afflicted with two miseries. On the one hand, man suffers from materially oriented social and cultural values. On the other hand, he has become a victim of fear and insecurity. Because of a materialistic attitude, modern man has an insatiable desire for worldly objects, which leads him away from the highest values of life, and he is burdened with religious dogmas that do not offer anything substantial to satisfy his intellectual search. Unfamiliar with the true significance of religion, he discards even the constructive and useful values of his religious heritage. Consequently, he turns into an atheist and disbeliever. He is not satisfied following dogmas and customs, but when he discards them in frustration, he is still dissatisfied. This dilemma has been created by blindly following teachers who themselves do not know what Dharma is. We must not be afraid to ask questions and find answers. We must not be afraid to discard illusion and embrace the truth. We must ask ourselves, what good is that Dharma that advises us to wander in the forest, leaving our essential duties behind? Think about that. We must ask ourselves, what good is that Dharma that advises us to wander in the forest, leaving our essential duties behind? What good is that Dharma where there is no scope for correcting our mistakes in the world and living a clean and peaceful life? What good is that Dharma that contracts itself like a mimosa tree at the mere touch? We don't need to contract from other humans. We don't need to contract from the world. A religion must meet its prime goal of loving all and excluding none. Certainly, a religion must not allow any room for hatred and jealousy. A religion must lead humanity from diversity to unity. It must strive to remove inequality and distortions. Our society today has been shattered into pieces, and the innumerable existing religions have been instrumental in the process of its disintegration. We need concepts and disciplines to help us transcend differences of opinion, contradictions in life, and odd complexes. It is useless to brood on the past. If possible, we should learn from the past. The journey of life cannot be completed by dissociating oneself completely from past experiences. Past successes and failures remind us to stay on the right path, and thus, if assimilated properly, the experiences of the past can make our present more constructive and creative. In the light of the past, one selects the flower of the future. In order to brighten the future, the past is born in the form of the present. We must learn the art of remembering the past and creating a golden future simultaneously. Mere memory of the past, resulting in worry, excitement, grief, or pride, is worse than forgetting the past entirely. We must learn how to balance the past and the present to create a promising future. Pretty good idea, isn't it? Balance the past and the present. As long as we are bound by superficial or dogmatic values from the past, we will not be able to reshape our present and guide our future. The blind faith, superstitions, customs, and dogmas found in our societies do not have their roots in inspired scriptures. They do not have any rightful place in the vast body of eternal Dharma. The seeds of hypocrisy, blind faith, and dogmas grow in the fertile soil of the self-centered proclamations of teachers who exploit the ignorance of their followers. We see a lot of that around us, don't we? All teachers and preachers cannot be expected to have direct experience of the truth. If the custodians of religions and leaders of society had realized the truth, then the society, and for that matter, humanity, would have been enlightened by now. Every human being subscribes to some belief or follows some religion. Every human being has a teacher or a preacher or a precedent to guide him. And yet the public at large is suffering from ignorance, inequality, and injustice. With the passage of time, some day-to-day values of Dharma have changed, but the parochial custodians of religion have not allowed a qualitative change to take place in society. Because of ego, narrow-mindedness, and selfishness, they fail to grasp a broader vision of reality. They lack the humanitarian spirit of religion. Instead of teaching universal truth, they propagate their personal beliefs. Afraid themselves, they discourage their followers from experimenting with new values to match their ever-changing community life. The custodians of religion try to teach the scriptures in their own personal language and from their own peculiar perspectives. They exploit the humility and ignorance of their followers who consider their exhortations to be the divine will. It is deplorable that their discourses are full of stories used to support their sectarian and tainted viewpoints. Behind the curtain of their discourses, there is little more than selfishness. And we see this around us. Hi, Mike. Hi, Tara. It is true that our ancient teachers were great. Their wisdom was profound. Their morals were high, and their spiritual insight transcend the limitations of time and place. However, we have not been able to take advantage of this great treasure that could have made life better and brighter. Instead, innocent people are told today that the exhortations of their preachers have the divine as their source. They are forced to believe that the clergy are representatives of God, that their wishes are the wishes of God, and that they are the ones who should define the religious and moral standards of mankind. Such misconceptions have become the bane of the major religions of the world. Pretty strong statements, but it gives us all food for thought and reflection. Now we can decide for ourselves where we want to be in this world and Dharma and all of that. Dharma has been a great force in uplifting the human race. Dharma can help us today as it did in ancient times, but only if we start living the truth, not merely believing in truth. Turning away from the Dharma and distancing oneself from the truth is not a desirable way of living. It ultimately leads to misery. One who disregards Dharma and ignores moral values remains confused. Such a person cannot have peace of mind. In the practice of Dharma, one is advised to shed the veil of ignorance and practice truthfulness in one's thought, speech, and actions. Practice is the key word there. How can Dharma be secret, having revelation as its source? Without withholding nothing, all the great sages in the world shared their knowledge with humanity. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, Quran, and the Dhammapada, knowledge, like the sun, shines for all. And we don't have to be a follower of those traditions, but we each can learn from them. I've studied and learned every one of these that he just mentioned here, and there's wisdom in every one, it has seemed to me. Deceit leads to secrecy. The secret is that which cannot be held for all, which cannot be presented to all. The elders say that there are only 3 places where we find secrets: in the life of an enemy, in the sectarianism of priests and preachers, and in selfish doctrine. Truth is a self-shining virtue. It is not meant to be fenced in and kept secret. The principles of Dharma are eternal. They are enlivened with the power of truth. There is no need to shroud them under the veil of secrecy, and there is no need to teach those principles to the selected few. The truth is open to all, and so is Dharma. Indeed, there are some spiritual disciplines that may be introduced only to those who are ready to practice them, but they are not reserved for any ethnic or privileged group. I'll give you an example here. Earlier in this chapter, we talked about some core principles that I mentioned to you. For example, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. These core principles, he did not use Sanskrit words with it, but some of them are known as the Mahavakyas, great contemplations. And not everybody at all times is ready to do that kind of contemplation on the notion that Brahman alone is real and the world is unreal. Many of us are living at a point in life in the world that the idea that the world around you is unreal can be shocking. Now, this does not mean that other people are better than those people. It just simply says there's a point in time along the way where we become prepared to actually do the contemplation on the unreality of the world. Even when we reviewed that section, there was comment made there by Swami Rama pointing out that if you do this too early, it can, I'm paraphrasing my words, it can mess up the way that you relate to the external world. So we have to have a certain degree of preparedness to be able to contemplate on the unreality of the world. I'm mentioning this here only as an example. And here, indeed, there are some spiritual discipline that may be introduced only to those which are ready to practice them. So that was introduced earlier, but we did not go into great depth with it. So to have greater, deeper conversations about that does seem to require some preparedness. Otherwise, it just causes confusion. But here's what he says here, but they are not reserved for any ethnic or privileged group. And that's not the spirit of that statement there about contemplating these great contemplations called Mahavakyas. They are open to all sincere followers of Dharma and are meaningful to those who can grasp their applicability and appropriateness. And I will even add here, just to support this thing I'm saying about Mahavakyas, it has been quite a few years now that I've gotten this kind of email. But I put an article on my website that I compiled about the 7 Mahavakyas that I put there and explained them in very practical detail of how to practice them. And I have gotten a couple emails over years, it's been quite some time, people criticizing me, some fundamentalist religionist people telling me how absolutely wrong that I am to have published on an internet website page a description of the Mahavakyas, because those are supposed to be secret. Well, they're not secret. They're open in public view. If there's anything secret about them, it's only from the fact that not many people will actually dive into them and contemplate on them. And not everybody today at this point in time are prepared to do those contemplations. They are open to all sincere followers of Dharma and are meaningful to those who can grasp their applicability and appropriateness. Hi, Daniel. Nice to see you. We should talk sometime. It's been a long time since you and I have had a chat. Let's do that if it's okay with you. Dharma resides not in dogma, rather it lives in the conduct of those who practice it. If we really believe in God, then that belief must pervade our thoughts, speech, and actions. It is hypocrisy to believe in high ideals but not practice them. One's day-to-day life must be lived in accordance with one's principles and ideals. There is no use in constructing a theory that cannot be applied in day-to-day life. A theory that is not practiced is no better than a body without breath. That's not very useful, is it? A principle or doctrine that can be practiced only in the temple or on a certain occasion is hardly helpful for humanity at large. It is at best a fad that comes and goes. To practice Dharma, we must grasp the essence of all religion rather than merely be entertained by the fascinating stories retold by the preachers down through the ages. All the religions of the world have built castles of mythology. Their preachers and priests recite myths as part of their worship and claim that listening to them is a source of spiritual enhancement. Assimilating the morals of those stories rather than merely reacting to them emotionally is the source of spiritual benefit. I'm going to read that last sentence again because it really says something. Assimilating the morals of those stories rather than merely reacting to them emotionally is the source of spiritual benefit. In all of these mythologies, there is tremendous, tremendous wisdom, but we must take that wisdom and apply it in our own lives, in our own inner journey of contemplation and meditation. And that's where the richness comes. I tell you what, let's pause here. There's more to come in this section. It'll take us one more time to go through this section. And as a reminder, this section is on religion and Dharma. Pretty good stuff, isn't it? And it's out of A Call to Humanity, if you happen to join late and missed what we're talking about here. So, to be continued. Thank you for visiting and showing up and playing. Hi again, Daniel. Let's do talk when one of these days, okay? And so I hear from the subtle realm the voice of that goddess suggesting to me that it is time to push the button. So actually I have two buttons to push here. I will push, boom, there is button number 1 pushed. And now maybe if we do this well, we can find the principle of and the goal of Dharma to be found. Maybe we can find a little glimpse of that in some way or another, each of us, in the Dharma of the silence that is after an Om.